My name is Serena, and I'm 33 years old. The day my best friend framed me for something I didn't do, my career, my reputation, and everything I'd built for 10 years shattered overnight. She forged emails, spread lies, and watched me get destroyed, all while pretending to comfort me. But what she didn't know was that I was quietly collecting every piece of evidence that would one day expose her. And when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just clear my name, it buried hers. I've always believed that hard work speaks for itself. For nearly a decade, I dedicated my life to building a reputation of honesty and excellence at the marketing firm where I worked. My name, my work ethic, and my ideas were all I had. I never imagined that someone I trusted most would use those same things to destroy me. My closest friend at the company was Brielle. She and I had started around the same time, both young and eager to prove ourselves in a male-dominated industry. From the outside, we were inseparable. Lunch breaks together, shared cab rides after late nights at the office, inside jokes that made long meetings bearable. Brielle had a magnetic energy about her, always smiling, always admired, always just a little too perfect. But there was something else beneath her charm, a quiet competitiveness that I brushed off as ambition. She was the kind of person who needed to win, even if no one else knew there was a competition. When the firm announced that a senior manager position was opening, I felt ready. I'd led our biggest client project to record-breaking success, and my name was naturally floated as the top candidate. I remember Brielle's smile when she found out. "You totally deserve it," she said, hugging me. Her tone was sweet, but her grip lingered, firm, almost rehearsed. I didn't realize then that it was the beginning of something far darker. Over the next few weeks, strange things began happening. A client mentioned an email I'd supposedly sent promising discounts I never approved. Another mentioned a rude message I had written late at night, one I had no memory. I laughed it off, blaming system glitches or misunderstandings. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but soon the whispers grew louder. Colleagues avoided my gaze in meetings. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. I caught people glancing at their phones, exchanging looks that made my stomach twist. Then came the message from HR. "Please report to conference room 3 at 2 p.m. When I walked in, the head of HR, a stern woman named Serena, was waiting with 2 folders on the table. My hands trembled as she gestured for me to sit. "Serena," she began, "some serious allegations have been brought forward regarding client communications and falsified records." I felt my breath catch. "Allegations? Against me?" She opened the first folder. Inside were printed emails, messages sent from my work account, suggesting that I had offered clients secret deals in exchange for favorable testimonials. The words blurred before my eyes. "These aren't mine," I stammered. "I didn't write these." Selena exchanged a glance with the HR assistant beside her. "The timestamps and IP addresses trace back to your login. Until we complete a full investigation, we'll have to suspend you." My world tilted. I had built everything on my name, my integrity, and now it was being torn apart by lies. I walked out of that room in a haze, my ears ringing with disbelief. Outside the office, I found Brielle waiting near the elevators. She looked concerned, her hand clutching a paper coffee cup. "Serena, I heard about what happened," she whispered. "I can't believe this. You know I'm here for you, right?" Her voice dripped with sincerity, but something in her eyes, that flicker of satisfaction she couldn't quite hide, made my stomach knot. She reached out, touching my arm. "Don't worry, it'll all blow over. I'll talk to people, try to calm things down." I nodded weakly, unable to process the betrayal already taking root. That night, I stayed late to clear out my desk, company policy during suspension. As I packed my folders, I noticed a single document lying under my keyboard, a printed email draft addressed to a client, one I'd never seen before. My name was typed at the bottom. It was the same fake language used in the HR evidence. My pulse quickened. I picked it up carefully, noticing a faint smudge on the corner, bright crimson lipstick, Brielle's signature shade. She wore it every day. The same bold red she claimed was her power color. I stood there in silence, staring at that mark, the air thick with realization. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't gossip. Brielle had set me up. And for the first time that day, I felt something stronger than fear, a quiet, burning anger. As I stared at that lipstick-stained paper, one thought echoed in my mind. If she wanted a war, I'd fight it silently and let the truth speak louder than anything I could ever say. I thought Brielle was my friend, but betrayal tastes a lot like the coffee she brought me every morning. I used to believe Brielle was more than a colleague. She was like a sister, We'd celebrated birthdays together, confided in each other about family struggles, even spent holidays at each other's apartments when work kept us from traveling. I knew her coffee order by heart, a caramel latte with oat milk and 2 pumps of vanilla. She knew mine, black, strong, no sugar. For years, that morning coffee ritual had been our silent bond. The morning after my suspension, I realized even that had become poisoned. I kept replaying moments from our friendship, searching for signs I'd missed. There was the time I covered for her when she missed a client meeting because she'd stayed out too late, or when I lent her a few $100 to fix her car, money she never repaid but promised she would. I'd thought I was being a good friend. Looking back, I'd simply been giving her leverage, pieces of me she could twist when the time came. Days turned into weeks as HR continued their investigation. Every morning, I woke up hoping to receive a message clearing my name, and every evening, that hope thinned a little more. My phone buzzed constantly, not with support, but with gossip. A coworker texted me, "People are saying you hacked the client database. Is that true?" Another message came from someone I'd mentored. "I'm so sorry, Serena. I don't know what's real anymore." Inside the company chat groups, my name had become a warning. Screenshots leaked of conversations questioning my ethics. My profile photo disappeared from team pages. In the office, I was invisible, and outside it, I was toxic. I tried to stay strong. I spent hours combing through my work emails, my laptop, even old chat archives, hoping to find something that proved my innocence. Every digital trail seemed spotless, but too spotless, like someone had carefully wiped away the truth. And every time I checked Brielle's social media, I found little daggers hidden between the lines of her posts. Fake people always show their true colors eventually. Karma doesn't miss. She'd post photos from the office, smiling with my old team, captions full of gratitude for fresh beginnings. I knew those words weren't just updates. They were trophies. My mentor, Lydia, was one of the few people who still talked to me. She was a senior director, calm, wise, and always watching quietly. One afternoon, she called me. "Serena," she said softly, "you didn't deserve this. But listen to me. Someone inside that company wants you gone. Don't confront them. Don't speak to anyone. Just observe." Her voice trembled slightly, like she'd seen this kind of betrayal before. "The truth always finds its way out," she said, "but only if you give it space to breathe. Silence can be your strongest weapon." It was hard advice to follow. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to post the truth online where everyone could see, but every word I said could be twisted. Every emotional reaction would feed Brielle's narrative, the unhinged ex-employee who couldn't accept responsibility. So, I followed Lydia's advice. I stayed silent, and I started writing. I kept a notebook, small, black, and hidden in my bag. Every day, I recorded details. Dates, times, who said what, who avoided me, which files had changed. I even noted the tone of emails, the timestamps of logins I hadn't made. It was tedious, almost obsessive, but it gave me purpose when everything else had been taken away. Then, one evening, everything shifted again. I stopped by the office to return my company badge. HR had requested it for record keeping. The building was nearly empty, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing in the silence. As I walked past the glass conference room, I heard a voice. Brielle's voice. I froze. She was inside, standing near the window, her phone pressed to her ear. Her tone was low but sharp. "No, she doesn't know," she said, laughing softly. "The story's already out there. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late." I edged closer, my heart pounding so loudly I thought she might hear it. Then I heard my name. "Serena." "Yeah, that's her. She'll deny everything, of course. But the journalist already has the emails." My blood ran cold. Emails. Journalist. Lies weren't enough for her anymore. She was taking her story to the public. I pressed my back against the wall, my mind racing. She wasn't content with ruining my career inside the company. She wanted to destroy my name everywhere. And in that moment, I made a silent promise. I wouldn't confront her. I would let her talk. Because soon, the truth she'd buried me under would come back to bury her instead. I learned that silence can scream louder than words, especially when lies travel faster than the truth. It started with a blog post. The headline hit my phone like a bullet. Rising marketing star accused of unethical conduct. Beneath it, my name, Serena Hall, was written in bold letters, followed by paragraphs of speculation, half-truths, and outright lies. The article accused me of manipulating clients, forging deals, and sabotaging coworkers to climb the corporate ladder. It cited anonymous sources from inside the company. I didn't need to guess who that was. The tone was casual but damning, the kind of piece that spreads fast because it confirms what people want to believe. Within hours, it had hundreds of shares and a comment section full of strangers calling me everything from opportunist to fraud. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but it wasn't from people offering help. Friends stopped replying to my messages. A former client canceled a contract saying they needed to protect their brand. My parents called that night, voices trembling. "Serena, what's happening? Did you really—" My mother's question broke mid-sentence, as if she couldn't bring herself to say it. I wanted to scream that I was innocent, to tell them everything, but the words caught in my throat. What good would shouting do when the entire world had already decided I was guilty? Meanwhile, and Brielle played the perfect innocent. She commented on the blog post with a sympathetic heart emoji and wrote, "So sad to see this. I hope the truth comes out soon. Praying for everyone involved." Her comment went viral. People praised her kindness. The irony was suffocating. At work, those who still had to interact with me did so cautiously, like I carried a disease. Lydia tried to reassure me, but even she couldn't undo the damage. "Keep your head down," she whispered during one of our calls. "They'll eat their own lies eventually." But I couldn't wait for that. I needed to fight, not with emotion, but with precision. So I turned my focus to the one place Brielle thought she had control over, the digital trail. I began by reviewing the evidence HR had shown me, the fake emails and documents that bore my name. At first glance, everything looked legitimate. But when I looked closer, I noticed tiny irregularities, fonts slightly off, timestamps that didn't match my usual working hours, even metadata showing file edits when my computer had been off. That was my first spark of hope. I reached out to an old college friend, Mara, a cybersecurity consultant who'd always been brilliant with systems. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but when she heard my story, she didn't hesitate. "Send me what you have," she said. "If someone faked this, there'll be digital fingerprints. They always leave something behind." Over the next few days, Mara and I worked quietly, using remote access and backup logs that most employees didn't even know existed. What we found made my stomach churn. The emails HR had used as evidence against me weren't just sent from my account. They were created using credentials that had been logged in from a different device, one located inside the company office after midnight. The system showed multiple access attempts from a terminal registered under Brielle's workstation ID. It was all there, the timestamps, the IP addresses, the login sessions, proof that she'd been crafting those messages while I was home, asleep, trusting her. Mara's voice came through the call, steady and calm. "Serena, this is damning, but we'll need more if you want to make it undeniable. Check her backup drives. Sometimes people forget what they've deleted." That night I went back to the office under the guise of collecting personal belongings. I had a spare key card, still active, thanks to HR's administrative delay. The halls were empty, the glow of computer screens casting long shadows. I moved quickly, plugging a portable drive into Brielle's workstation. Her desktop was clean, too clean, but deep in the system folders, hidden under generic names, were several backup archives. I opened one and saw folders labeled by dates, project names, and then one that made my heart stop. Plan B. I clicked it open. It was empty, or at least it looked empty. A few keystrokes later, I enabled hidden files. Suddenly, lines of documents appeared. Draft emails, mock HR complaints, even templates for fake evidence. Every step she had taken to frame me was documented in that folder. I copied everything. Every file, every timestamp, every shred of deceit she'd buried. As the progress bar crawled across the screen, my reflection stared back at me from the monitor, tired, furious, but determined. When the transfer finished, I opened the final document out of curiosity. It was a checklist titled Plan B, Final Phase. At the bottom, one line stood out in bold: "If she doesn't quit, make it public." My chest tightened. She wasn't done with me yet, but neither was I. She thought she could bury me under her lies. I decided to let her dig her own grave. The moment I opened the Plan B folder, my breath caught in my throat. Each file was a small act of cruelty, carefully arranged and named like trophies. Drafts of HR complaints written under different employee names, forged emails designed to mimic my tone, even practice versions of fake client messages. Every line of text was an echo of my own voice, but not my words. Scrolling through those files felt like being dissected while still alive. She hadn't acted out of impulse or anger. She had planned this for months. I found one file dated nearly 6 months before my suspension, long before I'd even been considered for the promotion. That meant this wasn't about opportunity, it was about obsession. For a moment, I imagined storming into her office, throwing the printed evidence on her desk, and demanding to know why she'd chosen to destroy me when I had done nothing but help her. My hands shook at the thought. The temptation to confront her was overwhelming. I wanted her to see that I knew, to watch her face crumble under the truth. But Lydia's voice echoed in my memory like a guardian. Don't speak. Let the truth do the talking. I took a long breath and stepped back from the computer. Confrontation would only warn her. If she knew I'd discovered her secrets, she'd erase everything before anyone could see it. And this time, I needed the truth to speak loudly, not through my anger, but through undeniable evidence. The next morning, I walked into work as if nothing had happened. The whispers followed me down the hall, the same judgmental stares, but I smiled. I even stopped by Brielle's desk. She looked startled to see me. Hey, I said evenly, placing a folder on her desk. Just wanted to drop off the last campaign notes before I clear my access. She blinked, then smiled too sweetly. Oh, thank you. I didn't expect to see you back here. Yeah, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Just tying up loose ends. Our eyes met for a brief moment. Her gaze confident, mine unreadable. She thought she'd won. I could almost see the relief in her posture, like she believed I was finally accepting defeat. It was exactly what I wanted her to think. While she floated through her days, basking in her false victory, I quietly built my case. I began compiling everything I had, the copied folder, the timestamps, the metadata from Mara, and even screenshots of Brielle's suspicious online activity. I documented every interaction, every email sent from her account after hours, every system login that connected to her workstation. It became my ritual. Coffee in the morning, calm smile at work, and hours of silent gathering after dark. I didn't tell Lydia everything, only that I was handling it. She didn't ask for details. She trusted that I was following her advice. One evening I stayed late, claiming I needed to finalize a presentation. The building was quiet, just the hum of air conditioning and the soft click of my keyboard. I used that time to back up my own files onto a private encrypted drive. Years of projects, reports, and authentic communications that would prove my consistency and credibility. If Brielle had fabricated my downfall, I would prove who I truly was. Down to the last email. The next step was the hardest, involving the company itself. I drafted an email addressed to HR and the corporate legal department, attaching a single screenshot as bait, just enough to catch their attention, not enough to reveal my full hand. I asked for a confidential meeting. The following week, I was escorted into a small conference room. Serena from HR sat across from me again, her tone professional but wary. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize, the company's legal counsel, Mr. Wyatt. He was quiet, observant, the kind of person who noticed everything but said little. I began with facts, not emotion. I showed them the timestamps, the metadata, and the file structures linking Brielle's account to the falsified documents. I didn't mention Mara by name, protecting her in case this spiraled into something larger. When I finished, silence filled the room. Serena looked stunned. Wyatt leaned back, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. This is serious, he finally said. If what you're showing us is authentic, this goes beyond workplace misconduct. It's corporate fraud. I nodded, my hands steady. That's why I came to you directly. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I just want the truth verified. They exchanged a glance that told me everything I needed to know. I'd given them enough to act. Serena spoke next, her voice cautious. Serena, we need you to remain silent about this. Don't mention it to anyone, not even your mentor. We're launching a formal internal audit effective immediately. As I left the room, the weight of their words sank in. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just a victim. I was part of the storm that was about to break. Brielle had built her trap for me, but she didn't realize I'd already built one of my own. And this time, she was the one walking straight into it. I waited. I smiled. I watched the woman who ruined my name dig herself into a hole too deep to climb out of. After the meeting with HR and legal, the world didn't suddenly shift, but the air inside the office changed. There was an undercurrent, a tension that hummed quietly beneath every polite greeting and forced smile. The audit had begun. I wasn't told the details, of course. They'd only said it would be handled discreetly. But I didn't need official updates to know what was happening. You could feel it. The cautious glances, the hushed hallway conversations, the way certain people suddenly became nervous around their computers. HR started their digital sweep, working closely with the IT department to trace emails, logins, and file histories. They didn't make a public announcement, but rumors always found their way through the cracks. Some employees whispered that the company was cracking down on data breaches. Others thought they were auditing client communications after a complaint. No one knew the real reason, except me and Brielle. At first, she pretended not to notice. She strutted through the office as if nothing had changed, her laugh echoing just a little louder than usual, her perfume trailing through the halls. But slowly, I began to notice the cracks, the way her smile faltered when she saw IT staff walking past her desk, the way she minimized her screen whenever someone from HR stopped by. She was nervous, and she should have been. Meanwhile, I played my part perfectly. I didn't avoid her. In fact, I went out of my way to speak to her, keeping my tone warm and friendly. Once, in the break room, I even thanked her in front of 2 coworkers. "Brielle," I said with a calm smile, stirring my coffee, "I really appreciate all the support you've shown me these last few weeks. It's meant a lot." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, before she regained her composure. "Of course, Serena," she said, her voice overly sweet. "You know I've always got your back." "Oh, I know," I replied softly. "I really do." The tension between us was invisible to everyone else, but to me, it was electric. A silent battle being fought in glances and smiles. Days passed, and the office grew heavier with unease. People started whispering about random interviews being scheduled. HR had begun calling employees in one by one under the guise of routine review meetings. No one wanted to admit it, but the entire department was on edge. When it was Brielle's turn, she strutted into the HR office like she owned the place. But when she came out 40 minutes later, her expression was different, tight, brittle, like glass under pressure. She smiled at the first person she saw, but her hands shook as she held her phone. Later that afternoon, I overheard snippets of conversation floating through the open workspace. She said something about client logs. HR found mismatched timestamps. "I think they're digging into user accounts." The whispers spread like wildfire. It wasn't long before small inconsistencies in Brielle's story began to surface. People noticed her contradictions, how her version of events kept changing depending on who she spoke to. One day, she claimed she'd warned HR about Serena months ago, and the next she said she'd been shocked when the rumors started. It was subtle, but her credibility was unraveling, thread by thread. Meanwhile, the IT department quietly uncovered what I already knew. The metadata from the falsified emails matched login patterns from Brielle's workstation. The same inconsistencies I had shown HR reappeared in their system-wide audit. They found unauthorized access attempts, late-night logins, and even internal document copies linked directly to her user ID. They didn't tell me that, of course, but I saw it in the way Serena from HR started looking at me differently, with something like guilt in her eyes. Or the way Lydia, though unaware of my meeting with legal, noticed the subtle shift in how management suddenly treated me with renewed caution and respect. Still, I said nothing. Not to Lydia, not to anyone. My silence had become my armor. Every time someone asked if I'd heard anything new, I'd just smile and say, "I'm sure everything will come out in the wash," and it did. One Thursday afternoon, I was typing at my desk when the HR assistant appeared in the doorway. Her voice was low, almost hesitant. "Brielle, can you come with me for a moment?" Every head lifted. Brielle froze mid-sentence, her smile faltering. "Oh, sure," she said, standing up too quickly, nearly knocking her water bottle to the floor. I watched her walk past me, her heels clicking faster than usual, her knuckles white as she clutched her phone. For the first time since this nightmare began, she didn't look like the confident, untouchable woman who'd orchestrated my downfall. She looked frightened. The entire floor fell silent after she disappeared into HR. Minutes stretched into an hour. The air felt dense, heavy, almost electric. When she finally emerged, her face was pale, her eyes rimmed with red. She didn't look at anyone, not even me. She grabbed her bag and walked out of the building without a word. As the elevator doors closed behind her, I knew one thing for certain. The truth had begun to surface, and there was no stopping it now. The moment truth stepped into the light, it didn't need me to say a single word. A week after Brielle's unexpected HR meeting, I got an email marked confidential, attendance required. The sender was Serena from HR, and the subject line made my stomach twist. Executive review, case resolution. I knew immediately what it was about. When I arrived at the conference room, I paused outside the glass doors for a moment. My reflection stared back at me, tired but steady. My palms were damp, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. I took a breath and stepped inside. Around the long table sat the company's senior executives, the HR director, and the legal counsel, Mr. Wyatt. At the far end sat Brielle. She looked nothing like the woman who used to strut through the office with effortless confidence. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale, her hands gripping a tissue so tightly it was almost shredded. "Serena," Selena said, her tone soft but formal. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." I sat across from Brielle, careful to keep my expression neutral. No gloating, no anger, just quiet composure. Wyatt cleared his throat and began. "We've completed the internal audit regarding recent allegations of misconduct and falsified communications. What we found is deeply concerning." He turned the screen toward us. Side by side, 2 emails appeared, one labeled original, the other altered. Even from across the table, the differences were clear. Subtle wording changes, timestamps off by minutes, and fake attachments inserted after the fact. These falsified documents, Wyatt continued, were traced to a single workstation, login credentials belonging to Ms. Brielle Collins. A murmur rippled through the room. Brielle's eyes widened. Her lips trembled. "That's not true," she blurted. "Someone must have used my computer. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Wyatt didn't flinch. "Ms. Collins, we have login records, access timestamps, and security footage placing you in the office after hours during each instance of data manipulation." Brielle's voice cracked. "I was under pressure. Serena was getting everything. The clients, the recognition, the promotion I deserved. I just wanted people to see that she wasn't perfect." Her words echoed off the glass walls, raw and desperate. Selena's expression hardened. "You created false evidence to frame a colleague, Brielle. You jeopardized our client's trust and our company's integrity. This isn't just unprofessional, it's fraudulent." Brielle's shoulders shook as she began to cry. "I didn't mean to ruin her life," she whispered. "I just wanted her to stop looking down on me." I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, my gaze steady. Not once did I speak. There was nothing I could say that the evidence hadn't already screamed louder. Wyatt nodded toward Selena, who pulled out a printed document, the official findings report. "Effective immediately," she said. "Brielle Collins' employment with the company is terminated. Legal counsel will contact you regarding further investigation into data tampering and defamation." Brielle's crying stopped. She looked up, her tears turning sharp, her voice venomous. "You think she didn't have anything to do with this?" She spat, pointing at me. "She's been after me for years. She's manipulating all of you. You're too blind to see it." No one answered. Wyatt simply closed the folder. "Security will escort you out." For a brief moment, our eyes met. Hers were full of fury and disbelief, not at what she'd done, but at the fact that she'd finally lost control. A pair of security officers appeared at the door. Brielle stood slowly, trembling, and allowed them to guide her away. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. When the door finally shut behind her, Selena exhaled deeply. "Serena," she said, her voice gentler now, "we owe you an apology. We failed to protect you from this. The board has been informed, and your record will be fully cleared." I nodded once. My throat was tight, but I managed a quiet, "Thank you." Wyatt began gathering his papers, the other executives murmuring among themselves. As people started to stand, a voice cut through the noise. "Serena," said a calm, measured tone. It was the CEO, Mr. Raines. He'd been silent the entire time, watching everything unfold. Now he gestured for me to stay seated as the others filed out. When the last person left the room, he leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady on mine. "Close the door, please." I did as he asked, feeling the familiar tension rise in my chest. He folded his hands. "You've been through hell," he said quietly, "and you handled yourself with remarkable restraint. I'd like to talk about what comes next." My pulse quickened. What did he mean? What comes next? I sat back down, heart pounding as the room emptied of sound, and waited for his next words, sensing that my story inside this company wasn't finished yet. When lies fall apart, the silence they leave behind feels heavier than any apology. The morning after the meeting, I received an email from the CEO's office marked "Reinstatement and Next Steps." The subject line alone made my hands tremble. I opened it carefully, almost afraid it would disappear if I blinked. The message was brief but clear. My name had been fully cleared of all allegations. My employment was reinstated immediately, and at the very bottom, in a personal note from Mr. Raines, were 4 simple words that made my throat tighten. "I'm sorry we doubted you." For weeks I'd carried the weight of suspicion, humiliation, and isolation. Seeing those words felt like a breath I hadn't taken in months. finally filling my lungs again. Still, the relief came tangled with something else, an emptiness that apology couldn't quite touch. Later that day, HR issued a company-wide memo. After a thorough internal and legal review, we have determined that recent allegations made against Serena Hall were false and fabricated. Appropriate disciplinary actions have been taken. We regret any distress caused and reaffirm our commitment to integrity and fairness. The email spread through the office like wildfire. My inbox overflowed with messages, short apologies, awkward congratulations, half-hearted explanations from people who had ghosted me when things got hard. Glad to hear everything's sorted. Knew you couldn't have done it. Hope no hard feelings, right? It was strange how easily people switched sides once the truth became public. The same coworkers who had whispered behind my back now smiled too brightly when I passed their desks. They asked if I was okay, if I wanted to join for lunch, if I'd be back on the next big project. I smiled, nodded, and answered politely. But inside, I felt detached, like a ghost watching the living, pretend everything was fine. Vindication was supposed to feel triumphant, but instead it felt quiet, heavy. That afternoon, Lydia came to my office. She didn't knock. She never did. She stood by the doorway, her eyes soft. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "the phoenix rises again?" I smiled faintly. Something like that. She walked in, sitting across from me. "How does it feel?" I hesitated. "Like I won a war I never wanted to fight." Lydia nodded slowly. "Justice doesn't erase pain, Serena. It only restores balance. What you do with that balance, that's what matters now." Her words settled deep. Lydia had always been right about one thing. Integrity wasn't about being perfect. It was about standing firm when everything else tried to push you down. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding what betrayal had tried to destroy. Not just my career, but my confidence. I stopped hiding. I spoke in meetings again, contributed ideas, and began mentoring younger employees who'd been afraid to speak up during the chaos. Every now and then, I'd catch a few curious glances, people still whispering, still wondering, but I didn't care anymore. I'd lived through worse. Then one morning, Mr. Raines called me into his office. His tone was light, almost casual. "You've handled yourself with grace through this entire ordeal," he said. Frankly, better than most of us would have. I thanked him quietly, unsure where he was going with this. He smiled. "The board reconsidered your candidacy for the senior manager position. Given the circumstances and your proven leadership under pressure, we'd like to offer it to you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The same promotion that had started all this, the one betrayal had been willing to destroy me for, was now in my hands. I accepted, of course, but it wasn't the same victory I'd once dreamed about. It didn't feel like a reward, it felt like a responsibility. I made a silent vow then that if I was going to lead, I would lead differently, not through charm or competition, but through awareness, honesty, and compassion. My first week in the new role was surreal. People treated me with a mixture of respect and caution, as though they feared I might expose them next. I didn't hold grudges, but I didn't forget either. The scars were still there, invisible but deep. One evening, as I packed up to leave, my computer chimed. A new email appeared in my inbox. The sender's name froze me mid-motion. Brielle Collins. The subject line was simple. "Can we talk?" For a long time, I just stared at it. My pulse quickened, my mind spinning with every possible reason she could be reaching out. My finger hovered over the mouse. Part of me wanted to delete it, without reading, to close that chapter forever. But another part, the part that still needed closure, whispered that maybe this was the last piece of the truth I hadn't faced yet. I met the woman who destroyed my career, not for closure, but to make sure I didn't carry her guilt anymore. For 3 days, I stared at Brielle's email without replying. Every time I hovered over it, my chest tightened. Part of me wanted to delete it, to pretend she no longer existed, but a quieter voice, the one that had guided me through months of restraint, whispered that maybe this wasn't about her anymore. Maybe this was about me, finally letting go. So, I wrote back, "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Cafe Adria." Cafe Adria was small, tucked into a quiet corner of the city, a place we used to visit back when we were still friends. It felt poetic, meeting her in the same spot where our bond had once felt unbreakable. When I arrived the next morning, the cafe was half empty. Soft jazz played in the background, and the smell of espresso lingered in the air. Brielle was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window. I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was unkempt, her makeup smudged, her once polished nails chipped. The confident woman who used to glide through the office like she owned it now looked smaller somehow, diminished. She stood when she saw me, her eyes filling instantly with tears. "Serena," she whispered, her voice cracking. I nodded, setting my bag on the chair opposite hers. "Brielle." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, fragile. Then she broke it, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I don't even know where to start. I know you probably hate me, and you should. I ruined everything." Her voice wavered as she reached for a napkin, twisting it in her hands. "I've lost everything, Serena. My job, my reputation, even my friends stopped talking to me. People cross the street when they see me. I deserve it, I know, but I just—" She stopped to swallow her sobs. "I needed you to hear me say I'm sorry." I didn't say a word. I just watched her, letting her talk. "I was jealous," she continued, her voice shaking. "You were everything I wanted to be. Respected, admired, trusted. Everyone loved you, and I felt invisible. When the promotion came up and I realized it was going to be you again, I just lost it. I told myself if I could make people see your flaws, I'd finally have a chance, but it got out of control." She wiped her face with trembling hands. "I never thought it would go that far. I thought maybe you'd just step down. I didn't mean for it to destroy you." I felt my throat tighten, but not from pity, from clarity. For months I had imagined this moment, her admitting the truth. I thought hearing it would feel like victory, like release. Instead, it just felt hollow. She looked at me then, searching for something. Maybe forgiveness, maybe understanding. "Please, Serena," she whispered. "I know it's too late, but I just need to know that you don't hate me." I took a breath and met her eyes. "Brielle," I said softly, my voice steady, "I don't hate you." Her expression flickered with relief. "You don't?" I shook my head slowly. "No, because hate would mean you still have power over me." I leaned forward slightly, my tone calm but firm. "I didn't ruin you, Brielle. The truth did. All I did was stop protecting you from it." She blinked, her face crumpling as the weight of my words sank in. "I didn't think you'd be so cold," she whispered. "I'm not cold," I said quietly. "I'm just done." I stood up, sliding my chair back gently. She didn't move, just sat there, staring down at her coffee as silent tears fell into it. For a moment, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not triumph, but peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally let go of something poisonous you've been holding too long. As I stepped out of the cafe, the crisp morning air felt lighter, cleaner. The sun was just beginning to rise higher, casting soft golden light across the street. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped needing. I walked away without looking back. Brielle's apology wasn't for me, it was for herself. And I realized I didn't need to forgive her to move on. Forgiveness wasn't about absolving her, it was about reclaiming peace. By the time I reached the corner, my phone buzzed in my bag. I almost ignored it, but something made me pull it out. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number and the name of a national marketing firm I'd admired for years. I answered. "Hello?" A professional voice came through the line. "Hi, Serena Hall. This is Dana from Stratix Media. We've reviewed your portfolio and reputation recovery work, and we'd like to discuss a national-level position with you." I stopped walking, my heart racing. For months, I'd been rebuilding from the ashes. Now it seemed the world was finally ready to see me for who I truly was. In the end, I realized I never needed to ruin her. The truth was enough. It always was. A month after that call from Stratix Media, I was standing in a high-rise office overlooking a skyline I'd never seen before. The city was alive beneath me. Buses humming, lights flickering, people moving like currents through the streets. It was a new world, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like mine. Taking the new role hadn't been an easy decision. It meant leaving behind everything familiar, my team, my mentor, and the city where I'd built both my success and my pain. But when the offer came, I knew it wasn't just a career move, it was a second chance at peace. Stratix made me director of brand development, a position that carried weight and respect. On my first day, I walked through those doors with the quiet confidence of someone who had already faced her worst storm and survived. People there didn't know me as the woman who was accused. They just knew me as Serena Hall, the woman who got things done. Word of what had happened at my former company spread quietly through the industry. It became something of a cautionary tale, not about scandal, but about strength. A few months into my new role, I received a message from an old colleague. "They're using your case as an example in corporate training, calling it the integrity audit." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Somehow my pain had turned into a teaching tool, proof that even in silence, truth has its own voice. Later that year, Stratix invited me to deliver a keynote at their annual leadership summit. The theme was Resilience in Modern Leadership. As I stood on that stage facing hundreds of professionals, I told my story, not as a victim, but as a lesson. I didn't name names. I didn't talk about revenge. I talked about silence, patience, and trust, about how sometimes the loudest thing you can do is nothing at all. When I finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then came the applause, not the kind that's loud and fleeting, but the kind that carries understanding. I smiled, not out of pride, but out of peace. After the event, I called Lydia. She was retiring that month. You'd be proud, I told her. I already am, she said. You did what most people can't. You walked through fire and didn't come out bitter. We talked for hours about everything. Work, life, what comes after all the battles are won. Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with me. Don't let what they did to you become who you are. Let what you learned define you instead. When Lydia retired, Stratix reached out to her to consult on mentorship programs. She declined and recommended me instead. It was the last handoff, the closing of one chapter, the quiet beginning of another. Sometimes late at night, I still thought about Brielle. I wondered where she ended up, if she found another job, if she ever made peace with herself. I never searched for her online. I didn't need to. The past no longer had a hold on me. One evening, as I walked home through the city, I stopped at a small park. The sunset painted everything gold, and a group of children laughed nearby. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes, letting the sound of life fill the silence. That's when it hit me. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what she'd done. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about refusing to carry her actions any longer. Brielle had already taken enough from me. I wouldn't give her my peace too, so I forgave her, silently, privately, completely. Not for her sake, but for mine. From that moment, I promised myself one thing. Never again would I let lies define me. Never again would I shrink under someone else's shadow. The truth had freed me, not by shouting, not by fighting, but by simply existing. It had waited patiently, and when it finally surfaced, it spoke louder than any accusation ever could. As I prepared to leave the park, I looked at the sky one last time and thought about how everything had come full circle. I didn't destroy her. I didn't need to. The truth had done what I never could. It had shown the world who she really was and who I had always been. I smiled as the sun disappeared beyond the buildings, feeling lighter than I had in years. I didn't say a word when she lied about me, and I didn't say a word when the truth destroyed her, because sometimes silence is the loudest revenge. In the end, I didn't need to ruin her. The truth did that on its own. I learned that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. When you know what's real, will eventually rise. Brielle lost everything she built on lies, and I rebuilt my life on truth. Revenge didn't come from shouting. It came from surviving with dignity. And sometimes that's the loudest victory of all. If this story moved you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, because every story of truth deserves to be heard. I've learned that betrayal doesn't just destroy trust. It reveals who truly stands beside you when everything falls apart. Tell me in the comments, if someone you loved betrayed you like this, would you forgive them or let silence be your revenge?